I'm 33 years old, from a small town tucked away in the mountains of West Virginia. It's a place where time seems to slow to a crawl, and people's futures feel set in stone. You either farmed or you went to work in the mines. My parents were a prime example. For 30 years, they cultivated tobacco and corn on that barren land to put their 3 children through school. To this day, I can still picture my father's calloused hands, the dirt permanently wedged under his fingernails, and my mother's back, stooped from years of hunching over in the fields. Every penny they earned smelled of the earth and the salt of their sweat. In that world, me getting into a pre-med program at a state university was practically unheard of. The $20,000 a year tuition was an astronomical sum for my family. In the end, it was a combination of federal student loans and my parents going door to door, borrowing from relatives and friends, that got me through the university gates. From that moment on, I was the pride of the family, the golden phoenix, as the townspeople said, who'd flown out of the mountains. Today, I'm an attending physician with what everyone envies as a golden ticket, a stable, respectable, and lucrative career. But what none of them know is that I shattered that golden ticket to pieces with my own two hands. Looking back at the last 17 years, my life should have been a bright, upward path. Instead, I dragged it into an abyss from which there is no escape. The story begins in high school. In my freshman year, my good grades got me into the honors class, but the seeds of restlessness had already been sown. I quickly fell in with the troublemakers. At first, our fun was innocent enough, just $5 a hand poker at the local pool hall. But in the corner of that hall, the shimmering lights of the slot machines were like a mysterious vortex, constantly pulling me in. The jingle of tokens, the gaudy music of a jackpot, it was all an irresistible temptation. I started playing, and on a good day, I could win $20. The thrill of getting something for nothing was enough to keep me euphoric all day. By my sophomore year, I was completely hooked. My grades plummeted, and I was transferred out of the honors class and into a regular one. When my father found out, he cursed me out for the first time in his life, while my mother wept silently beside him. They forbade me from seeing my bad friends, and made me live on campus. But in a twist of cruel irony, the very friends I was supposed to avoid ended up in the same regular class with me. We didn't stop, we got worse. We secretly rented a dark, damp basement off campus, a place where the air was thick with the smell of mold, and you needed the lights on even during the day. We turned it into our own private kingdom, our underground casino. We skipped class, stayed up all night playing cards, and hit the slots. I once watched a friend lose his entire $4,000 in tuition money. The next day, he quietly packed his bags, dropped out, and left to find work in another state. We never heard from him again. My own luck seemed better. One time, after losing all my money, I was just watching a machine for someone out of boredom. As a thank you, he gave me $12 or so in credits. I casually placed a bet, not really paying attention, and suddenly the numbers on the screen went wild. I had won over $1,000. My heart was about to pound out of my chest. It was 100 times more thrilling than acing an exam. $1,000, that was 2 months of living expenses for me. The sheer impact of that money got me completely hooked on that instantaneous, insane rush. I failed my first college entrance exams. It stunned everyone. But my father, despite his disappointment, chose to believe in me one more time. He sold thousands of pounds of grain and pressed all the money, over $5,000, into my hand to send me to a prep school in another city. I remember carrying the heavy grain sacks with him, his shirt soaked with sweat, as he told me over and over, "This is the family's last hope. You have to make us proud." With tears in my eyes, I swore to myself 100 times, this year, I would quit gambling and fight like hell to win back everything I had lost. But vows are so fragile in the face of temptation. Before school started, that same good friend I used to gamble with found me. He asked to borrow $3,000, claiming it was for a business venture. Because he'd always been generous when he won, I trusted him completely and lent him my tuition money. Of course, when it was time for me to pay my fees, his phone went straight to voicemail. He had blocked me on WhatsApp and Facebook. Panicked, I had to swallow my pride and ask a female classmate, who was already in community college, for help. Her family was also officially designated as low income and struggled to get by, but she was kind enough to borrow from her working friends, cobbling together $2,500 to cover my tuition. I spent that year of prep school living in shame and guilt. I couldn't tell my parents, so I had to painstakingly save money from my $800 monthly allowance to pay her back. To save money, I'd often split the cheapest lunch with my roommate, wash my hair with ice-cold water in the winter, and only allow myself a hot shower at the public bathhouse once every 2 weeks. I can still feel that bone-deep cold and hunger today. Perhaps the hardship forged me. On my second try, I actually got into a good state university's medical school. The enormous tuition once again plunged my family into financial crisis. My sister, who was studying nursing, and I were both in college at the same time. We both took out massive federal student loans, and my father took out another bank loan, just so we could continue our education. After graduation, my life seemed to be on easy mode. I passed my medical licensing exams with ease and landed an enviable job at a hospital in a small city. The position required me to first complete a 3-year residency at a top teaching hospital. During those 3 years, I not only received my salary from my home hospital, but also a generous stipend and performance bonuses from the training hospital. My life went from scrimping and saving to incredibly comfortable overnight. It was at that top-tier hospital that I witnessed the true power of money and the depths of human desire. Some of the senior surgeons, after their morning rounds and surgeries, would spend their afternoons at a card room across the street. They played for high stakes, with tens or even hundreds of thousands of dollars changing hands in a single night. My own mentor was a dyed-in-the-wool gambler. If he had a good night, he'd casually toss me a few $100s and tell me to treat the interns to dinner and drinks. His unconcerned attitude toward money slowly warped my own values. The 2018 World Cup was the turning point. By then, I had paid off all my student loans and had $80,000 in savings. My parents would often call, urging me to save up for a house, their hopes for my future boundless. At work, betting on the games was rampant. A senior colleague won nearly $20,000 off a $100 parlay bet. He excitedly took a group of us young doctors to the most high-end spa in the city. In the dimly lit, flashing lights, fueled by alcohol, a stunning masseuse with a killer body whispered in my ear. As someone who'd never had a girlfriend and was still quite conservative, I was instantly overwhelmed by the sensory assault. From special services costing a few hundred to over $1,000, I experienced a guilty pleasure unlike anything I'd ever known. After that, I started betting on soccer. At first, I just followed my colleagues' lead at the legal sports betting shops, placing bets of a few hundred or 1,000. I actually won over $10,000. I developed a rule: I'd never touch my savings. Instead, I'd use credit cards and online lending apps. I told myself it was risk management. If I lost, I'd borrow more. If I won, I'd cash out and pay it back. That way, my principal was always safe. By the end of the group stage, that same colleague showed off a win of over $40,000 from an offshore betting site where he'd correctly predicted the exact score of a single match. Offshore sites have better odds and way more ways to bet, he told me conspiratorially. You can even bet live while watching the game. It's a sure thing. He sent me the link, and I felt like I'd been given a secret martial arts manual. I started fantasizing about winning big, booking out the entire spa, and ordering the youngest, most beautiful girls, just to feel what it's like to be God for a night. I signed up immediately. The site offered a 10% bonus to attract new customers. I cautiously deposited $10,000, and my account instantly showed $11,000. I downloaded all sorts of sports analysis apps, joined countless free tipping groups on WhatsApp, and felt like I had become a professional overnight. From the round of 16 to the final, I bet on every single match. The money in my account quickly grew from $10,000 to $40,000. But the site had a rollover requirement before I could withdraw, and I was getting impatient. I figured 1 or 2 big bets would clear it. Reality slapped me in the face. I bet the over, the game went under. I bet on the favorite, and there was a shocking upset. One impulsive, all-in bet, and my account was wiped clean. I was so angry I almost smashed my computer. I uninstalled the app and swore I would never touch it again. But a gambler's vow never lasts long. In the days before the final, my social media was flooded with screenshots of winning bets from friends and colleagues. Seeing their euphoria and thinking about the $40,000 I'd lost, a bitter wave of resentment and jealousy gnawed at me like a snake. I found the app again and discovered I had a little over $200 in cashback rewards. It was like a call from the devil. I was instantly hooked again, depositing $15,000 to go all in on the final. It was France versus Croatia. Without hesitation, I put $13,000 on the over and scattered the remaining $2,000 on various exact scores. I'll never forget that match. France won 4-2, and I, by some devilish stroke of luck, had put $20 on a 4-2 final score at 45-1 odds. In that moment, my only regret was that I hadn't bet more. That one sent me completely over the edge. All told, I came out of the World Cup nearly $20,000 ahead. After the World Cup, life seemed dull. Even going to the spa felt empty, without the thrill of spending winnings to pay for it. I thought of the betting app again. I opened it and discovered that besides sports, there were endless other tempting portals: poker, esports, live dealers. I quickly became addicted to the faster pace and more direct results of baccarat. It didn't have the high vig of sports betting, and a hand was over in seconds. The adrenaline rush was intoxicating. Sometimes, on a lucky streak, One all-in bet could bring me back from the brink. I once turned a $20,000 stake into $40,000 in a single hand. But more often than not, I'd toggle between hesitation and impulse and lose everything in one go. I'll never forget one stormy night when, in the space of an hour, I lost a whole month's worth of hard-won winnings. I couldn't accept it. At 3 a.m., like a madman, I drove to an ATM, withdrew all my emergency cash, switched cards, reloaded, and lost it all again. That night, I lost everything. My entire credit limit across all my cards and the $300,000 I had scraped together from online lending platforms. I went to work like a zombie. My white coat was the perfect disguise. To pay off the high-interest debt, I had to withdraw my only $100,000 in savings, even paying a penalty to cash out a year's worth of my 401k. Then, I started using my status as a doctor to apply for loans from major banks. My profession and income were the best collateral. I easily secured $300,000. I paid off my previous debts, but the rest of it vanished at the baccarat table in less than a month. Including my savings, I had now lost close to $450,000. Surrender is not in a gambler's vocabulary. In 2019, at a family dinner, I met my future wife, a nurse. It was love at first sight. I used what little money I had left from gambling to woo her, taking her on trips and buying her the latest phone. We moved in together after 2 months. Soon, she was pregnant. But her family was very traditional with a strong religious background and was vehemently against her having a child out of wedlock. They pressured her to get an abortion. By then, having lost so much money, my patience and warmth had worn thin. I played dirty, telling them I didn't have the money and refused to sign the consent form for the procedure. In the end, her family relented, but on the condition that we get married immediately. Before the wedding, I got $10,000 from my father as a gift for her family and borrowed more from friends under the guise of paying for the wedding, scraping together an $80,000 gambling stake. While planning a wedding, I was fantasizing that this happy occasion would turn my luck around and I'd win back everything. Instead, the $80,000 went up in smoke within a month. I maxed out every platform I could borrow from again, and then, using my salary as collateral, took out another $300,000 loan from a different bank. By this point, my total losses had exceeded $800,000. If I had stopped then, maybe, just maybe, I could have gritted my teeth and kept up with the installment payments on those 2 bank loans. But all I felt was resentment and rage. I never once thought of stopping. Through all of this, my parents and my new wife knew nothing. In 2020, our child was born, and I finished my residency, returning to my original hospital. My parents urged me to buy a house. I lied, telling them I had only managed to save $30,000 after years of frugal living, hoping they would help. They ended up taking out a $150,000 bank loan, which, combined with my $30,000, was enough to buy a house in our small city. Married life was not the cozy picture I had imagined. My wife stayed home with the baby, and we fought constantly over trivial things. Behind all these arguments was the immense, secret financial pressure and my own simmering anxiety. Once, just because I saw her joking with a male friend on Facebook, I was consumed by jealousy. I lost control, snatched her phone, and smashed it on the ground. The argument escalated, and in a fit of rage, I wrapped my hands around her neck and squeezed. She struggled, her face turning purple. It was the baby's terrified, heart-wrenching cries from the crib that snapped me out of it. I looked at my wife and child clinging to each other and sobbing, and for the first time, I felt fear. I slammed the door and left, and after cooling off for a few hours, I came back and apologized, begging for forgiveness like a dog. The house needed renovations, and I didn't have a penny. I set my sights on a credit union. They saw my profession as a golden ticket and, after an assessment, approved me for a line of credit up to $700,000. The only condition was that my wife had to co-sign. I wove a perfect lie, telling her sweetly, "Honey, this is for our family. Let's apply for a renovation loan. We don't have to pay interest if we don't use it. We'll just take out $150,000 to fix up the house." Her innocent heart was moved by the beautiful future I painted, and she signed the papers without a second thought. When that $700,000 credit line appeared in my account, my panic vanished. In its place was a delusional sense of control. Because it was an interest-only loan for the first 3 years, my payments were minimal. With this huge sum of money and the growing rift with my wife, I started staying out all night. I'd drive my first car, a used Buick, and cruise through the city's infamous red light district like a ghost. It was just like in the movies, dozens of heavily made-up streetwalkers under dim streetlights, swarming any car that slowed down. "Hey handsome, $150, what do you say?" It was so much cheaper than the spa. Twisted by desire and pressure, I gave in easily. I started frequenting prostitutes, even adding one on WhatsApp, carefully blocking all my family and colleagues so they wouldn't see. Afterwards, I'd go to a spa, enjoy a massage and some flirting, all while watching a game and placing bets on my phone. I kept making excuses for my failures, concluding that I lost before because the odds on single games were too low and the risk too high. This time, I'd be smarter. I started playing high-risk, high-reward parlays. I even spent a fortune on so-called AI analysis and insider tips. Once, I actually hit a parlay with a $200 bet and won nearly $10,000. A return of over 40 times my stake made me feel like a god of gamblers again. But when I was winning, I could stick to the plan. The moment I started losing, I'd immediately lose control and jump to stud poker or baccarat. Any game became a lifeline to win it all back. I maxed out all my online platforms for the third time, this time adding nearly $100,000 from various small loan companies. By my count, I had now lost $1.2 million. I was at a dead end. I had to pull some strings to get my wife a job at the hospital so she could cover her and the baby's expenses, while I used my salary to pay down the few loans that were solely in my name. During the pandemic, I received tens of thousands in various government subsidies. Then, from that $700,000 line of credit, I started slicing off pieces like a sausage, taking out another $400,000 to fill the holes I'd dug. Renovating the house ended up costing $250,000. We received $80,000 in cash gifts at our housewarming party. After paying for the renovations, there were a few tens of thousands left over. That money was quickly thrown back into the bottomless pit of gambling. By then, my total debt had reached a number I didn't dare calculate. In 2022, I was surprisingly well-behaved for an entire year. It wasn't that I didn't want to gamble, it was that I was truly, completely out of money. I spent that year like a zombie, with no passion for my work. Gray hairs sprouted in clumps. Then the 2023 World Cup came around, and the devil inside me reawakened. Around that time, I happened to be sent for another training rotation at a major hospital, giving me plenty of free time and solitude. But I made a more shocking discovery that nearly broke me. I found out my wife had started betting on soccer. In the middle of the night, while she was asleep, I used her fingerprint to unlock her phone. When I saw it was filled with payment reminders from lending apps and a single transfer record for a staggering $50,000, I felt the blood drain from my body. She had become another me. I was furious, humiliated, and yet felt a sick sense of satisfaction. I called her family and, like a judge, forced her to write a letter of repentance. She even borrowed money from me, claiming her grandmother was sick, only to lose every cent I transferred her. When the debt collectors started calling me, I coldly chose to stand by and watch. I told myself I was saving her, that helping her would only harm her, and more importantly, harm myself. My wife's betrayal became the perfect excuse for me to keep gambling. I felt profoundly deceived and hurt. I needed revenge. I needed an outlet. I found that familiar betting website again and even swore at the screen. Only soccer. If I play anything else, may I be struck by lightning. I started obsessively researching corner kicks, yellow cards, any obscure betting market I could find. I spent nearly $30,000 on various insider tips and AI analyses. By the end of the 2023 World Cup, I had lost another $100,000. The tournament was over, but my gambling wasn't. I started betting on the top 5 European leagues, the Japanese league, the Korean league. If there was a game, I had a bet on it. The end result was the same as every time before. By 2024, that $700,000 line of credit was completely tapped, along with hundreds of thousands more from online loans I had maxed out for the 4th time. At that moment, sitting in my empty apartment, I sat down and seriously calculated my debt for the first time. I finally arrived at a number that made my soul tremble. Over the years, I had lost a total of more than $1.6 million. What finally woke me up from this insane dream was late in 2024, when the federal government began cracking down on illegal and abnormal transactions through bank cards and electronic payments. Because of my frequent, rapid, large-volume transfers, often late at night, I started getting calls and warnings from my payroll bank, payment platforms, and even the FBI's anti-fraud center. When I received that call from a federal agent, I was truly terrified. A fear unlike anything I had ever felt seized me. In that moment, I realized with chilling clarity that if it weren't for this final line of defense, my next step would have been to turn my predatory hands toward the family and friends who trusted me so completely. Now at 33, I have the hair of an old man, and my eyes hold a weariness and sorrow that don't belong to my years. When my parents visit, they worry that I'm just overworked at the hospital. They have no idea that their brilliant doctor's son, the angel in white, who was supposed to be saving lives on the operating table, has, over the past 6 years, gambled away enough money to buy 10 houses in their small town, over $1.6 million. They don't know he cheated on his wife, relapsed countless times. My life has become a shameful, pathetic lie. The installment payments on the first $300,000 loan are almost finished, but that's just the tip of the iceberg. The massive loan from the credit union and hundreds of thousands in other debts hang over me like mountains. Every day is a tightrope walk of robbing Peter to pay Paul, taking out new loans to cover old ones, just to maintain the illusion that I'm not delinquent. My credit score is laughably good. So good that even today, I could easily borrow another $1 million from major banks. So good that my friends would lend me money in a heartbeat. Because in their eyes, I am still that upright, kind, successful doctor with a limitless future.